Okay, today we'll think about environmental risks and human disasters. So, thinking about the major research topic of environmental sociology being the interrelationships between natural environment and human society. The topic for today is about how to manage the violent behavior of natural environment, because human society are affected by violent behavior in natural environment. So it's a big issue, how to manage, how to calm down, how to well prepared when the natural environment goes violent. And it asks human lives. Many people unexpectedly lose their lives when facing environmental disasters. So we'll think about environmental risks and human disasters today. Okay, these are the topics I will mention for today. Firstly, I will introduce risk society thesis. And second, I mention some different types of risks. And the third, it's a big issue. It's a quite important issue. How to manage, how to handle with environmental risk, because no human society is free from natural disasters. And as I mentioned before, when nature becomes violent, that brings a significant negative impact upon human society, whether it's either claiming human lives or claiming human properties, And so it's all about how to reduce the human disasters. And then fourth, I mentioned the issue of how to manage environmental risks in mega cities. Because Seoul is one of the good examples for mega cities. So living in a big city, in a mega city like Seoul, I think it's a good issue. I think it's a very important issue for the city governors, those people who organize city life in Seoul. And then I conclude the topic for today. So risk society thesis was proposed in the 1990s, so in 1992, by this man. So this man is named Uli Beck, German sociologist. In fact, he's not an environmental sociologist. He's rather an expert in social institutions. But in terms of conceptualizing modern society, he proposed the concept risk. And then he wrote a book titled Risk Society, and it became very, very influential to many the sociologists in the world. And this book is among the big, quite influential intellectual works in sociology. But as I said, he's not an environmental sociologist. He does not identify himself as an environmental sociologist, unlike Riley Dunlap and the Arthur Moore. They identify themselves as an environmental sociologist, but he is more expert in social institutions. But conceptualizing modern society, he considers risk is among the key feature. So modern contemporary society is a risk society. So modern contemporary society is a big facing how to manage risk. So he has published in series a lot of books that has titles risk, like a risk society, world risk, so on, so on, so on, until he dies very unexpectedly. He died very quite shocking event, but he's a big name in environment, not only in sociology, not only in environmental sociology, but also other sociological disciplines, because he's among the key person to define contemporary society, and the concept risk was well received by other sociologists to refer to contemporary society. He said, what does risk society means? Risk society refers to a society whose main features are to manage and govern the manufactured risks that are drawn from natural world. So he made a differentiation conceptually between natural risks and manufactured risks. So if you consider society transformation from hunting-gathering society up to post-industrial society, right? The society formation and the way society works is very different. But what he said when he conceptualized modern contemporary society as a risk society, he said compared to the previous society types like a hunting-gathering society, agricultural society, like a pastoral society, the modern society coming with the Industrial Revolution and French Revolution in terms of political institution change, the key part is the technological involvement in society organization. And that means compared to the previous types of society like hunting, gathering, and pastoral and agriculture, in the society, the way it is organized, it's heavily influenced by technology. And for him, manufactured risks means the risks that are created in natural worlds due to the technological involvement. So, for example, hunting-gathering society and pastoral society, agricultural society, the way technology involved in those society to be formed is very limited, right? But then industrial society, whether it's a beginning phase or intermediate phase or post-industrial society, the way technology involved those three types of industrial societies are very significant. And for him, technology has double phase. One is a very good thing, to bring a convenience life to industrial society members, the people living in industrial society. It's the way technology presents human lives. It's in industrial society, humans' lives become convenient, right? Think about like to move distance, to move spaces. Like from here, Korea University to Hongdae. If you imagine that if you take a walk, how long does it take? If you take a walk, how long would you imagine? From Korean University to Hongdae. Everybody knows Hongdae, right? It's a very consumption space. If you want to make a fun, you just go to Hongdae and then eye shopping and blah, 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 pubs and bars and restaurants and, So how long would you imagine it takes from here to Hongdae by walking? Lina?
I don't know, hour and a half.
1 hour and 90 minutes.
Yeah, or like 2 hours because it already takes 35 minutes.
Have you tried taking walk?
It was like 30 minutes for tried walking?
No,
No.
no, okay. So you imagine it takes 90 minutes?
Yeah, or more.
Okay.
Probably.
What about in New York, in Manhattan? Did you walk? Do you used to walk all the time?
I don't live in New York City. I live in a rural area.
Okay,
in New
okay.
York State, but
okay, understand.
But we do walk a lot.
You do, okay. What about Rachel? You do walk a lot in New York?
I don't live in New York City.
Okay, but do you walk a lot?
No, I live in a really tiny city, so it's easy to drive.
Okay. But how long do you take? Sewon, Junior? Have you ever tried walking to Hongdae from any spot in Seoul? Taking a walk. From where?
From my house.
From your home. Where is it? We can share. Where it is? Near to Hongdae? No? Near to Korea대? No? Anyway, okay. But think about taking a metro from Korea University to Hongdae. It takes probably within 15 minutes, 20 minutes, right? Taking a metro, taking a subway, 16, you don't agree, so How long does it take from here to?
By metro,
Uh-huh.
about 40 to 50 minutes.
Are you sure? Oh yeah? Okay, okay. Taking long. So probably by taking a walk, probably taking longer. So okay, my point is technology brings a convenience to human lives. So we can save time and we can go move freely far long distances. And we can save our muscle power. We feel, if you take a walk, that brings you a lot of exercise and it can get you a sweat. But then sometimes you feel tired. But if you use a technological service, your body feeling much not tired and so on. So that's the good face of technology. That's the good face of technology. But then what is a bad face of, what is the negative face of technology? To him, to Uli back, the negative face of technology is the creation of manufactured risks. So this concept is very important, manufactured risk. So what is a manufactured risk? Once again, I say it's the risk created by technological involvement upon natural environment. So imagine that, that the time that we didn't send like aerospace at something in the air, in the far right there. But from the beginning of like the 60s and 70s, after the Second War, there are many projects and sending some technological things onto the some aerospaces, so on. So for him, it's also part of technological involvement upon natural environment, and he believes that it creates manufactured risks, and also he called new risks. So before, like a hunting-gathering society, people living hunting-gathering society, agricultural society, pastoral society, people living those three different types of society formation, they only experience natural risks. But then from industrial society, people living industrial society, they began natural risk plus manufactured risk, right? Natural risk plus manufactured risk. And for him, it's a manufactured risk, it's a new risk. And in terms of managing new risks, it presents challenge human life, how to deal with it, because it's a new risk. We didn't have that much experience before, so we don't have that much knowledge. So that's why it's called a new risk, okay? And he emphasized reflexive modernity. So doing modernity, I mentioned several times, the key thing, the flower of modernity is a technological invention, all right? So, but then he said, doing modernity, even if we keep continuing our modernity project, we have to take on reflexive manners. We have to take on the modernity project with a reflexive manner. What does reflexive means is that you do what you are doing. Okay, you are self-aware of what you are doing. That, to him, it's a reflexive modernity. So in terms of that, doing modernity in a reflexive manner, so what that means, reflexive manner, is that you are aware of what you are doing. So to him, it's a reflexive manner. So another way, you have to know that what will be the negative effect of technological development. So sometimes natural scientists and technological experts, they all the time think about positive, bright side of technological development. But for Uli Back, technological development sometimes also brings negative effect upon human society. So we have to think also negative, dark side of technological development. And that's what we sociologists have to do. We have to voice out what technological development will bring us, our lives, our human lives, right? because it's also in the ongoing project. We still haven't experienced what kind of project, technological development project will emerging. Probably something beyond our imagination, because 10 years back, 20 years back, we never imagined that we bring like this kind of supercomputer, like a micro supercomputer with us all the time. So you can do everything with these small machines. Nobody imagined that. But now nobody can imagine that to live without a smartphone. But then we have to think about the negative aspect of the technological development. That is called reflexive, doing modernity in a reflexive manner, right? So thinking about what we are doing and then what can technology development bring us, particularly negative, dark side of technological development, right? So technological development brings us humans a lot of benefits. We can save, we can move from many different distance, whether it's to the United States, France. You can go if you have money. You just have money and time. You just take a ticket and fly, you know, whether it's Alaska and so on and so on. That all comes with the technological development, and that's an unimaginable thing for people living in hunting-gathering society and agricultural society. That's the only thing that people living in industrial society that comes with the technology development can enjoy in their lives. But then there's a negative aspect of technological development. And for Uli Bak, that's very important of doing modernity, thinking about negative, dark side of technology development. And for him, you know, in relation to natural environment, he proposed the concept risk society. So risk for him, modern contemporary society is how to manage natural risks plus manufactured risk, and manufactured risks that come with technological development, technological involvement upon natural environment. Okay? Mm-hmm. So technological development are mainly made by scientific experts, right? You and me, like a social scientist, we do not have that much knowledge how to do technological development, how to develop, you know, very fancy laptops. We don't have knowledge, but we have knowledge of what kind of impact would those kind of change will bring upon human lives. Because we are social scientists, but then the technological experts, they know how to improve the technological devices and so on and so on. They don't know much about how this technological device improvement will impact upon, what kind of influence would exert upon human society, right? Okay. So he pointed out, Uli Bak pointed out the scientific experts, because they are among the key players to decide where to go, where the modernization project to go. They are among the key players. So in what kind of vision, what kind of imagination, what kind of philosophy they hold to develop scientific, technological development. That's very important to decide in what way human society evolve in the long run. Okay, so that's why for him, as scientific experts, having reflexivity, so being aware of what they are doing, and particularly thinking, imagining of in what way their practices, however their practice would be, to exert what kind of impact upon human society in the long run. So he mentioned also democracy within the scientific experts. Democracy is within the scientific experts. Democracy is the modern project. Thinking about hunting-gathering society and pastoral society and agricultural society, the way the society is organized is not democratic. It's not democratic. So democracy comes with the French Revolution, and democracy asks for everybody's involvement in society organization, right? either to vote for the candidates, representatives you want to, or bring out your opinion, so on. So the way a society organization, whether it depends upon democracy or non-democracy, quite different way of working. So he emphasized that democratic principle is important among the scientific experts groups, because I said scientific experts are the key players to decide which way a society moves ahead. Because modern society are very significantly impacted by which way technological development would take place, right? Yes, it is true. So I invite you to think about what kind of technology, however technological development would impact upon your lives, upon you to find a certain job, whether by the time you finish your university and by the time you fully prepared to find a job, maybe the job might disappear because the technological development take the job to disappear. Right? So, thinking about that, where there's the passenger cars, and people move just by horses, horse cargo. There's no buses and no passenger cars. So to move distance, people use their legs or the powers of animals, whether horses, and then yes, a horse. But then there probably big impact upon human life when bus and passenger cars are introduced, right? Mainly we can think about those people who run the cargo with the horse. They probably lose job, and that kind of things. Technological development can impact upon many aspects of human lives, and among them is a certain segment of population. They are more likely to lose their jobs due to the certain types of technological development. Anyway, and then so what Uli Beck proposed, argued for, is that scientific experts, their practices should be based upon democracy, and the way what they're doing and the way they practice their scientific expertise should be open to the public, because what they are thinking, what they're doing, how they practice their scientific expertise will affect many people in their lives, either negatively or positively. So anyway, in terms of that, their practice, how they practice their scientific expert in bring about new technology, in bring about certain types of technology development, their way of practicing their expertise should be open to the public, and that is called their expertise should be based upon democratic principle. Mm-hmm. Often their project, when they begin their project, it's a kind of disclosed. We do not that much in what way, in what kind of technological project they are doing. But then to Uli back, it's somehow dangerous. Because they are the kind of key player to decide, to determine where a society head in the long run. Okay. So think about the society industrial society in the beginning phase and the interim phase, and now it's called the post-industrial society. So each types of industrial society, the key, the sources for making wealth, has also changed. And now for post-industrial society, the key sources of wealth and the making wealth is the high technology. So technology has also some hierarchies, and high technology plus very attractive design, right? So if you want to attract, consumers. The product should combine with the high technology and very attractive design. Right? Okay. So anyway, for him, the technological experts, scientific experts are among the key players to decide human lives where to go. So their practice, the way they practice, it should be open to the public and should be based upon democratic principle. And Uli Beck proposed the concept alternative civic science. So it's the civic science, the collecting of information, the collection of knowledge is not made by scientific experts, but made by normal people, lay people, just like you and me, just lay people. So it's called either civic science or local ecological knowledge, either civic science or local ecological knowledge. Because knowledge collection about natural environment, you should be equipped with certain natural scientific knowledge, but then this concept, civic science and local ecological knowledge, is based upon everyday experience through your everyday experience and observing certain changes in natural environment. For example, if you are interested in fine dust, you can be a civic scientist. You are not equipped. Your major is not natural scientist. Your major is not about aerospace and so on and so on. You are just one of the citizens in Seoul, but then you are very interested in fine dust. So you take observation every day, every day by taking photos and reading newspapers and so on, and collecting information through your everyday life experiences and through your own research. You can gain information about natural environment, and that's called civic science and local ecological knowledge. So it's not made by the scientific experts, but it's made by lay people, ordinary people, through their everyday experience, through their long observations, by residing in certain places for a long time, right? So scientific experts, they are very skillful in utilizing, in managing, using scientific technological devices. But the civic science, local ecological knowledge is the concept emphasizing the everyday experiences. So you have to be keenly aware. You have to be keenly observable of the ways the natural environment change, whatever the kinds of natural environment. Okay, now we think about types of risk. There can be 3 different types of risks, but conceptually we can think about 3 different types of risks. The first one is unacknowledged risk. So there are some signals, warnings in advance, but you ignore the signs. For example, when earthquake is coming, when tsunami is coming, the little animals, best example, the mouse, they move collectively very fast to certain places. So they are very sensitive with the change in natural environment. Their sensory, the functions are much better than human beings. So, people next to little animals, and people just their way of life organization are very akin to next to the animals. They may have a better situated to observe those different, very odd behaviors of little animals. But then sometimes you ignore, you just dismiss. You do not take it seriously. You do not take it important. And that's called unacknowledged risks. Unacknowledged risks. So there was a sign before. There was a signal before, but then you do not take it seriously. And that's called unacknowledged risks. And the second type of risk, it's called unperceived risks. Unperceived risk. Certain areas are likely to be more dangerous, more risky than other human residential places. For example, coastal airline, it can be dangerous. It can be dangerous. It can be more dangerous than other human living residents. But then you do not take it seriously. It's a possible risky places. It's a possibly risky places. But then you do not perceive in advance, and it's called unperceived risk. Unperceived risk. And the third is unforeseeable risk. It's a risk that comes with a lack of scientific knowledge and lack of scientific monitoring technology. So you are not equipped. You have no resource to observe certain negative change in natural environment. So it's just you are hopeless. Probably some negative change, but you are hopeless because lack of scientific knowledge. But there are three different risks. Conceptually, it can be differences into three different types, right? And there's sometimes it's nothing risk, but then people make discourse to be risky, and it's called false risk discourse. It's nothing risky, but then the way people communicate through each other, it's partly social constructionist perspective. It's nothing. It's a realist, social realist. I mean, objective realist. It's not dangerous, but people make a false risk discourse. And there's a risk that are perceived, acknowledged, so that you can prepare better, you can manage better, and you can reduce the lives of the damage in human lives. You can save more lives of humans.
Can you give us an example of unperceived risk?
So possibly, it's a possible risk. You can tell it's a possibly risky places. Like, for example, coastal area. Some places, some residential places living along the coastal areas, and some residential places are made near to mountains, and some places around like rocky mountains and so on. Those places we can consider it's a possibly risky areas.
It's like the people in Hawaii that live next to like an active volcano. They
Sure.
know it could cause a problem, and they know that they might have to flee, but they still choose to stay. Would that be an unperceived risk?
Sure, yeah. So we can recommend those people living along the coastal lines or living next to mountains, living next to volcano places. We can recommend their governments, their local government, better prepared, more stronger measures to prepare the risk, because they are possibly dangerous, naturally dangerous places. Okay, so environmental risk, it is a material risk. What I'm saying, material risk is it has a form. You can observe when landslides happen. You can observe what's going on. It's not happening in your mind, in your brain. You can see. Your naked eyes can observe. When droughts happen, your naked eyes can observe, right? It's not happening in your mind, in your imagination. That's called material risk. But environmental risk is also partly social constructionist issue, because the way people communicate through each other, they can have different false risk discourse. Apart from real material risk, people can make some false risk discourse, right? So when droughts happen, when flooding happens, when landslides happen, when storming happen, when sea level rising, when hot water, extremely hot water, not water, sorry, weather. Extreme hot, I need the hot weather. Okay, extreme hot weather and extreme cold weather. We can see what's going on with our naked eyes, and it's called material risk. When you say material, it has a certain form, right? It does not happen in your brain, in your imagination. You can see, you can observe. That's why it's called material risks. But it's partly social constructionist because the way people, the content and the size of material risk and the seriousness of the degree of seriousness of material risk, it can be also constructed by the way people communicate about the certain types of natural risks. Right, okay, so in your life, have you ever experienced this kind of natural disasters? Oh yeah? Damaris?
Flooding, droughts, and hurricanes I experienced.
Wow, okay. Hurricane, okay, hurricane. What about Tanya? Have you ever experienced this kind of natural disasters? So how extremely cold? By centigrade, because if you say Fahrenheit, it would not happen. For me, it's very difficult to. Very cold anyway.
Like a lot of snow.
Mm-hmm. For many days. Mm-hmm. Jihan? Uh-huh. Have you ever experienced these different types of natural disasters, environmental risks? Storming? Okay. And Oksana, in Pakistan, have you ever experienced this?
I think we had an earthquake.
Earthquake. Storming and earthquake. Okay. And Sewon? Mm-hmm. Yes. Storming, only storming. Typhoon.
Small earthquake.
Small earthquake.
Hard to realize.
Sorry?
Earthquake, but that is really hard to realize.
Okay. Very low degree of earthquake. Okay. So when it takes I call them it's a violent behaviors in natural environment. Sometimes natural environment has a very friendly, like today. It's very shiny weather. Even though our classroom is not that well designed to receive very good sunshines, but outside it's very friendly, very nice. But then sometimes they become very violent. All of a sudden sometimes. But when they become violent, when they become very behaving bad to us, we can observe. That's why it's a material risk, and it can bring us damaged effects. So however violent of natural environment, we are not affected. We don't care. We don't care whether they become violent. We don't care if we are free from natural environment. But when they become violent, human lives are negatively damaged in many different ways. Okay, so once again, I mentioned the paradox of technology. The paradox of technology. Technology brings us good things, but then if your lives are more dependent upon technology, you are becoming more dangerous. That's the paradox of technology. Last week, I also mentioned the paradox of technology. Do you remember? Do you remember? Last week I mentioned the paradox of technology. The 2 weeks before, when we learned the environmental social theory second part 2, I mentioned the paradox of technology. 정원? No. 선영. Sorry, 선영. Yes, Evans paradox, right? Okay. Even if there's a efficiency in using certain natural resources, so that you can reduce the amount of natural resources to be manufactured for certain products. But then once they come to the market, the way the people, the rising demand among consumers happen. So it's like a zero-sum game rather than the production and consumption side. It's a better benefit. It's a kind of a zero-sum game. And it's another story of the paradox of technology. It means that if your lives organize upon technology, the more your lives are dependent upon technology, the more risk your lives is likely to take. So many people, they said in modern society, environmental risk becoming technological disaster, because Uli Beck said it's a new risk. That means that we do not much have knowledge about manufactured risks. Because if you consider through human history that if you consider the beginning of industrial society like 18th century and 17th century, we just experience of 300, 400 years, and particularly for the past 60 or 70 years after the Second World War, the technological development is made by the producing high technology, and we also do not much knowledge, observe at the time. We have not much time to observe how the new technology will bring up a negative impact upon natural environment. That's why it's called new risk, and we are more vulnerable because we do not much knowledge and we do not have much time to observe what the new risks will bring upon natural environment. So I will I'll introduce one example of the paradox of technology. So if your life is getting more and more dependent upon technological things, your life will become more and more dangerous. So I introduced one case study example. Raymond Murphy is a very famous Canadian environmental sociologist, and he produced a book titled Leadership in Disaster, Learning for a Future with Global Climate Change. And in this book, he discussed the case study of 1998 ice storming. So the raining becomes ice. So it's very cold. So it raining a lot, but then the raining becomes very icy, very cold, icy. So and it affects the Ottawa and Montreal and New York State and northern New England. So it's the borderline between New York, because New York State and then the borderline, the Canada, within South Canada, they're quite close to each other, right? So 1998 ice storming that hit Ottawa and Montreal, New York State and northern New England. And with this many days of ice storming, so basically it's raining, but then the rain becomes very icy, cold. So 5 days of raining, they paralyzed everyday life in these areas. That means basically society stopped to function. So people had to stay at home, because no electricity power provided for school operation, for the metro operation, for whatever. Basically, the collapse down of electric grids, and that means there's no way out to provide electricity power for school operation, for the business, the company operations. So simply society break down to operate. Society stops. So the schools and hospitals, banks and airports and whatever different areas of society formation simply stop to function. It just all the systems are broke down because the collapse down of electricity grids. So there is no way to provide electricity power to these different areas of society formation. But then these Amish people in northern New York State, Damaris, maybe you have known them.
There's Amish people 2 hours from where I live.
Okay, because she's from Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Okay, have you visited them?
The college I go to, it's in Amish country, so it's very like. In fact, in order to get there, you have to drive through Amish country.
Okay.
So you can see a lot of horses and buggies,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of Amish people.
Do you have any friends from Amish community? Or?
There's a couple students from the Amish community who go to the college.
Okay, but not you.
No, I don't have friends in particular from the Amish community.
What about Lina? Do you have any friends? No? No. Okay. But the Amish community, they are the least affected by the 1998 ice storming, the natural disaster. They are the least affected. So what with this case study, with this event, Raymond Murphy conclude this way. So it indicates us that how vulnerable the modern technological infrastructures are for extreme environmental events. He concluded this way because the Amish people, they are least affected. Why? Why they are least affected? Lo?
They don't rely so much on technology. So when infrastructures such as like the electricity break down, they still know how to go back to the basics, like using maybe fires or something to get about in doing their daily lives.
Correct, yeah. So their way of organizing their everyday lives are least based upon technological infrastructure, modern technological infrastructure. So when extreme extreme environmental events take place, they are least affected. But those societies, they are very advanced in terms of equipped with the modern technological the infrastructure. They are most affected by extreme environmental events. And that is called the paradox of technology. The paradox of technology. So it's just something like you prepare your essay by all handwriting, and then if something happens with your laptop, you prepare your essays on typing on a laptop, but one day it just all this disappears with something happens in your laptop, But then if you do preparing your essay in handwriting, even if whatever happens in your laptop, you still have your handwritten essays left. It's something like that. You have never lost your working in a computer, in a laptop. That kind of thing never happened to you. Just some malfunction or maloperation. Sometimes it that kind of things happen, That things happened to me when many years back, and I was so shocked, But anyway, so that is called the paradox of technology, and then it's a bit different context. The talking about the paradox of technology, which we discussed 2 weeks back, right? So that's the double face of technology. We often consider technology is a good thing, la 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 la. Think of, when all the commercial advertisement, they all say nice things about technology. But when extreme environmental events happen, technological, the more advanced technological thing, the more risk facing extreme environmental events. So during the ice storming events, the Amish people could manage their everyday lives regardless of the extreme ice storming events, because the way they organize their lives or everyday lives are least dependent upon technological infrastructure. So think about even also Seoul, the powering energy sources for school operations, subway and bank, and then the ice cream shops. Imagine that the electricity cut out, like for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, those little fish in a tank, they probably all die. Or think about the hospitals, those people who are on the operation. If they take off without, the breathing, the machines, without energy power, they probably all lose their lives. So it's called, because our modern lives are very dependent upon technological infrastructure. But then if bad things happen, it's very vulnerable in its effect. So they are the less dependent upon technological devices and the less affected by extreme negative environmental events. And that is the double face of technology, and it's called the paradox of technology. Mm-hmm. So when technology development is a progress, and when new technological devices are introduced to our everyday lives, we should be aware. We should be reflexive of what kind of bad impacts and what kind of good impact. We have to think both rather than just think one thing. That's the reflexive modernity. And even the technological experts, scientific experts, and those people who are involved in developing new technologies, they all the time are thinking about the bad effects and good effects, good effects and side effects. And that is called the reflexive modernity. So lacking of reflexivity among scientific experts and lacking of democratic principle among scientific experts, that can create more risks, that can present more risks for contemporary modern society. That's the key argument of Uli Beck. And he introduced that idea in early 1990s, and it became very well received by many sociologists. And when they wrote something about contemporary modern society, the concept of risk society is very much well quoted, thousand times. So basically, many people agreed with the assertion, the agreement of Uli Beck, thinking about a contemporary modern society in relation to technological development. Robert, what do you think? In one way, technological development will change your lives in good thing or bad thing, And recently I heard the news that some technological devices introduced to Seoul National University, then my crews, the employees who take care of the buildings, they probably kicked out because the new systems, they automatically can control, can check the building, the maintenance of buildings. So the human power, human employees, human power, humans who are employed for doing that work are not, so safeguards in university, they are likely to lose their jobs, and So you have to think about all the time the social issues of technological development will bring upon human lives, particularly certain people, certain segment of population. They are much more risky, they are much more dangerous in terms of losing jobs, because technological things will replace their jobs, right? So, and that makes a huge impact upon how society to operate and to function and to form. Okay, before I move to okay, sorry, I believe that I brought the photo of Gangnam area in the late 70s. And for me, it's a very good photo that show us the significant development, social development, which has taken place in Seoul for the past 30 or 40 years, from agricultural society to industrial society. Okay, during the break time, I look for that. So, okay, now I'll talk about how to prepare, how to manage environmental risks. So these are my conceptual suggestions. I suggest these conceptual maps, how to manage environmental risks. One is perceiving accurately possible risks, and planning adaptation and mitigation measures. Mitigation measures, it means how to mitigate, how to reduce the possible damaged effect upon human lives. That's called mitigation measures. And how to adapt. If you cannot avoid, you have to find certain ways to adapt to the change that you want to happen, but then it happens, So you have to adapt. Whatever you like or dislike, you have to adapt. And it's performing leaderships. The leaderships is all the time is an important aspect of human society organization, and particularly facing environmental risks, dealing with the environmental risks, and facing natural disasters. Performing leadership is very important. And responding properly to the possible real risks. So once again, I ask you to remind of the very topic of environmental sociology, how natural environment, or you can say natural world, and how human society, or you can say social world, how they interact to each other. And this figure shows you the different society formation, and it's a societal change, society change, right? That begins from hunting-gathering society and moves along pastoral society and agricultural society and industrial society. And according to Uli Bach, he's a German sociologist. He's a German sociologist. According to industrial society, it's very different from the previous three different types of society in terms of the everyday lives affected by technological development. And more than that, when negative, extreme environmental events happen, there are two different risks. One is a natural risk, and the other is a manufactured risk. And how to manage, how to handle with the manufactured risk will be the big topic, big issue for industrial society to face. So these three types, in terms of the degree of technological involvement, is very limited. for this society, it's very highly technologically involved. Think about the manufacturing factories. Factories. Have you visited any factories? If you visit any types of factories, there's a very big machines, and they are all based upon technological devices, technological things. So in terms of degree of technological involvement in the society is totally different from the previous three different types of society. It's very highly involved. And you can think about very different types of natural disasters, whether droughts or sea level rising or storming, landslides, and extreme hot cold weather. So one thing I can say, those people who live these three different types of society, they also experience these types of natural disasters. But what are difference? What are difference for people living in their society to experience these different types of natural disasters? It's a new risk. It's a manufactured risk. People living in hunting-gathering society, they also experience drought and flood and landslide, and that's called the natural risk. Natural risk, it happens. It's on its own system in natural environment. Sometimes they are friendly and not friendly. So it's a natural way of operating natural environment. But manufactured risk is different. Natural risk plus with the technological involvement. So it's called new risk. And then Willie Beck said it's a new risk. Manufactured risk is a more challenge than natural risk, because when the nature behaves violently, you can observe the pattern. You can observe the pattern, but if the natural world is involved by technological things, it's difficult to observe the patterns. In what way they move this way, that way, it's difficult to observe. So managing environmental risk is about how to act and how to react. How to act and how to react. And then that's all about reducing human disasters, reducing the sacrifices of human lives. So these are the 4 ways of acting, the responding to natural world: perceive, plan, and perform, and responding. So perceptions, how to perceive the material risks of extreme environmental events accurately. How can we do that? So perceptions can be made among publics, scientific expert groups, and government officials and business people. And we can ask these questions whether or not the risk perceptions among different social groups and differ, and how. And I ask you to go to the journal article that is putting into the end of the textbook. It's called Public Perceptions of Environmental Risk in China. It's a second journal article that comes after the new ecological paradigm. The article authored by Lei Zhang and Arthur Moore. You know Arthur Moore? I already introduced his name several times. Arthur Moore now is moving to China, and so this article is about the public perceptions, particularly the university students. They did the survey So they prepared the questionnaire and they asked the students, a lot of students, more than 1,000, about 2,000, and then they present their research outcomes. So we can ask in what way possible environmental risks, whether it's a landslides or it's a flooding, many different types of natural disasters are perceived by publics, And one of your the research essay topics is about risk communication, right? So I asked you to research you select 3 natural disasters which had taken place in South Korea for real. Three natural disasters, and new research in what way people talk about. So it's partly the communication about risk, about natural risk. And this article is about public perceptions, particularly the public consisting of the university students. Maybe we read the abstract part together. The journal is published recently, 2013, and I consider it's a good information for you to imagine, to know the public perceptions of environmental risk in China. So I ask you to read. Hobin, can you read the abstract for us? Sorry? Can you tell him what the page numbers? No page number? No page number, sorry. But it's the article just after the new ecological paradigm. Seems that many persons in classroom having flu, you know. Can you read that for us? Ready?
Yes.
Okay, please.
China and several society continue to tackle environmental risk management. Consider others man-made environmental risks not taken in three ways. Public awareness and perceptions of environmental risks are crucial in all phases of effective risk management. However, little is known about public perceptions of environmental risk in China. To contribute to better understanding of the public perception of environmental risk, a questionnaire survey was conducted among university students in Beijing to represent a group with high level of education and a generally high sensitivity to risk. The results show that even this group has limited knowledge about environmental risk and current risk management systems. Further studies are needed to understand the social construction of environmental risk Chinese public emergency response and risk management.
So they prepared the questionnaire and they asked the university students in Beijing. How many are they? If you go to the page 200, it shows the number of university students asked is 1,735. So it's a quite big number, right? But whatever surveys you want to do, you have to involve quite large numbers in China, because whatever surveys you do, you have to include large numbers of respondents. Why? Because the absolute number of Chinese population is very large, right? 1 billion? 1.2 billion? Yes, the whole population of China is huge. That's why whatever survey you do in China, it should be large. But anyway, the 1,735 university students in Beijing, they are asked about environmental risk. And this article I consider is a very good information, thinking about risk communication and the knowledge about risk, and also how to manage risks, particularly with the involvement of publics. So if you're going through the article, there are several figures, and that shows you the certain segment of Chinese population, particularly we can consider highly educated, and we can assume that they are highly sensitive to possible natural risks in China. In what way they perceive natural risks. So if you go back to the page 200, they put the different list of natural disasters, and according to this survey, the most seriously perceived among university students in Beijing, what is that? What is that? Water pollution, right? So those among 1,735 students, more than 70% of them, they consider water pollution is the most serious natural disaster issue, natural disaster. Water pollution, and then air pollution and noise pollution, vegetation reduction, water shortage, and biodiversity reduction. The two researchers, they listed a lot more numbers of natural disasters than I suggested in here. And in terms of serious, in terms of awareness among university students, it's a different degree given to different types of natural disaster. Okay, shall we have a break? We begin at 12 o'clock. Okay, shall we begin the second part? Okay, I ask you to visit the article we looked at, the public perceptions of environmental risks, the research outcome of the survey, the questionnaire survey. Questionnaire survey means that you prepare a number of question items and you ask the respondents. So the figure 1 in the page 200, it's the response patterns for the question is which risks are likely to happen most, and which are the potential effects of these risks. Yeah, which one most likely to happen, and which one is the potential effects if they happen. So the university students who are asked of this question, they said water pollution is the number one, is likely to happen most. Water pollution. So among university students, at least university students, they are very worried that in China, water pollution most likely to happen, and which is followed pollution in air, and then pollution in noise. So these are the number 3 potential environmental risks that university students are worried the most, that they are likely to most to happen, and then potential if they happen, the potential impact also, the potential risks are also most likely to be. And then if I ask to the page 202, the question asked 1,700. The question asked 1,725 students. Among the real natural disaster which had taken place in China for the past 10 years, which they have heard of it. So the real natural disasters which had taken place in China for the past 10 years is a blue algae bloom in Tayu Lake and water extent in Songhua River and lead blood extent in Shanxi and water extent in Chuho River, Beijing pollution in Guangdong, in Yangzhou High water extent in Yunnan. And these are the 6 natural disasters which had taken place in real terms. And then the researchers asked the students whether they have heard of these extent or not. And among the respondents, about 80% of them, they heard of the blue algae bloom in Tayu Lake. We have a student from China, right? DCU. Can you explain about this disaster? Have you heard of it? Not really, okay. So you are among the 20, who have not heard of this. Okay. Blue algae, it's like a Nokjo latte. It's like a green latte in Hangang or in the 4 rivers in South Korea. Blue algae bloom and water extent. So these are the real natural accidents, natural disasters. And 80% of the students, they say they heard of the blue algae. But Dixie is not. Water extent in Songhua River, about 80% also heard of it. And about 40% heard of it, lead blood extent in Shanxi. And about 20% of the students, the respondents, they say they have heard of water extent in Chuo River. And about less than 20% they say they have heard of the Beijing pollution in Guangdong. Okay. So if you following, okay, we go to the page 206. I cannot see well. If you go to the page 206, it shows the satisfaction level among the university students who are asked the question, official government information on environmental emergency actions, how much they are satisfied. Unsatisfied, 40%, very unsatisfied, 14%. So among half of them, more than half of them, they say they are not satisfied about the government actions to environmental accidents in terms of disseminating the information about emergency. What about in Australia? If these questions is asked to among the university students in Australia, the same question.
I think there would be a lot of dissatisfaction.
Dissatisfaction.
Yeah,
Okay.
because the government in particular, because they're the Liberal government, which is the Conservative Party, they don't really do a lot to help the environment. In fact, they kind of ruin it. They dump lots of trash into the Great Barrier Reefs, and now it's dying, and they don't do anything to stop it. So, yeah.
Okay, probably there's a country if they ask the same question, they should quite satisfaction for the for the government's actions in terms of handling with possible environmental accidents. But anyway, according to this survey outcome, at least in China, among the university students, they are not much satisfied. More than half of them, they are not satisfied about the government distributing information on environmental emergency extent. Very satisfied 1.2%, satisfied about 5%. So very few who are satisfied, and most of them they are unsatisfied. Okay. So there's a study about the perceptions among different groups, like a scientific expert groups and publics. If the perceptions among these four different groups are different, whose perceptions are considered most to prepare mitigation and adaptation measures? And there's a study by Douglas and her colleagues. I think this file is not updated. I did. Anyway, and they found out each different country prioritize certain groups' perceptions in preparing mitigation and response measures to possible environmental disasters. In Germany, they prioritize scientific risk experts. They depend upon the perceptions of scientific expert groups. But the US is exceptional. US, they prioritized the perceptions of publics rather than expert groups. But Canada and South Korea, but they studied Germany and the US and Canada. The South Korea, I just added in this with the question. The Douglas and her colleagues studied which social groups, when they are different particularly, prioritized in preparing mitigation adaptation measures for possible environmental disasters. And the United States is exceptional. They prioritize publics, not the scientific expert groups, but Germany and Canada, they prioritize, they consider more important than the perceptions of publics in preparing mitigation measures. So planning, adaptation, and mitigation measures. So we have to select, we have to design possible measures in what way react to possible environmental disasters. Whether it is feasible when real events happen, those adaptation measures and mitigation measures in preparation, they can be feasible to apply. And we also have to think about the cost. Even if it's a very fancy idea, even if it's a very feasible idea, even if it's a very nice idea, but if it costs too much, probably government are reluctant to spend money. And also, whether it's effective or not, it is a very fancy idea and it costs little, but then whether it is effective or not, it can be effective in saving the lives of humans when the real events happen or not. So we have to think about these things, and that means evaluating the possible different measures in preparing the possible environmental disasters. And performing leadership, how to perform and who should take in charge, whether it's a president, whether it's a minister, whether it's who should take in charge, who should be who should in charge performing towering leadership, and what qualities are needed in exercising leadership when the leaders present very strong, presence, like whether that's more effective to mitigate the very vulnerable feelings, or when the leaders become very emotional when delivering messages, that's more effect upon mitigating the very vulnerable feeling among people who receive the messages. So we can think about these four different social actors at possible disastrous environments. The first group is the people living in affected areas, and they can be called victims of the disaster. And the second group is the people living in non-affected areas, and they can be called the audiences of the disaster. So they see the disaster through the news delivery, news message, news coverage. But so it's important in what way their sufferings are framed through media coverage. The impact, the effect of the disasters to be delivered to the audience will be different, and also that makes a big difference whether they can be a voluntary cooperative with helping those people in the affected areas. And normally when the disasters are moving along long days, like 10 days or 20 days, the people, normally the audience become very tired receiving the sad news, tragic news, and so on, so on. But in the beginning, they might be quite showing, the emotional, very warm, feeling towards them, towards the victims. But when times moves a long way, they become quite tired receiving all the tragic and sad news, and then later on they just become, oh, that's it, That's also one pattern of responding to the victims observed among the audiences of disaster. And the third group is government officers responsible to handle with the event with their resources, and they can be called the managers of the disasters. The managers of the disaster. And the fourth is the people working in the media, the messengers of the information of the disasters. So we can think about social interactions when the real disastrous environment events happen, how the four groups interact to each other. So the way people interact with each other, some studies found the onset phase and interim phase and fading phase of disaster events, the way audience react to the victims, and the way managers perform their managing skills, and the way media, the messengers of the disasters, somehow their behavior change. And there is one study. It shows that if disasters involved technological things, for example, disasters from out of order of technological machines, like say there's a big, huge the buildings, and then there's some disasters due to the malfunction of technologically involved machines just stopped. When the kind of the disasters happen, social interactions among actors, they begin somehow in the beginning it's well balanced and cooperative, but as time goes by, they somehow become their relationship begin becoming destructive. So what I'm saying, the interactional patterns among the four different groups change as disaster events move along from the beginning and to the end. And normally when the disaster events involve longer time, people become tired, and the positive attitude that are held in the beginning is likely to disappear. So which means the way the managers are important to keep encouraging the audiences to be more to be cooperative and to be keeping holding positive attitude to the victims. The roles of managers and the roles of messengers are important. So it's one theory, one fact that when people face disaster events, there's a relationship patterns between the audiences and victims. And normally in the beginning phase, the audience, they held positive attitudes and very showing cooperative attitudes and cooperation. But as time goes by, especially the disasters involves longer time, their positive attitudes is likely change negatively. And I introduce one theory in disaster studies, it's called the emergence theory. Emergence theory. So emergence theory that tells us that norms, behavioral response patterns, emotions, identities among groups who are involved in disasters are emerging as disastrous events evolving. And there's an example of the case study of the 9/11 terror, which took place in 2002, right?
2001.
2001, sorry. Okay, 2001. There's a case study, empirical study that that's saying that the norms, behavior, response patterns, emotions, identities that are observed among people is somehow emerging as the disastrous events move along. So rather than the action, the response measures are executed as planned. Somehow those kind of response measures emerging. What I'm saying, emerging. You do not plan in advance. You did not plan in advance. The way people react, particularly anything? No? Okay. The way people to react, particularly in terms of providing the preparation responses, mitigation measures, and performing that kind of actions is somehow emerging rather than performed on pre-planned mitigation measures. And as an example for the case study of 9/11 terror, which took place in 2001, and they said, and the researcher, they said 100,000 people were evacuated from lower Manhattan by water, and this evacuation was made by emerging network. What I'm saying, emerging network, those networks who saved these people are not prepared, are not pre-planned, are not provided in advance. They're just emerging, facing the real disasters. That's emergency theory tells us what happened, in what way people behave when real things, real disasters happens. So there's some kind of arguments among the experts, risk experts, or the managers of the disasters. Do you have anything to discuss? No? Okay. There are theory, it's particularly among managers. They say we have to prepare in advance. We have to prepare in advance how to react for real disasters. But then there are some people, they say it's rather emerging response measures are better than those response measures in pre-planned. And they showed this example, then saying that emerging way of response measures are more effective than pre-planned measures. And they took the example for the 9/11 terror accident. So I showed the analytical framework of risk management. So perceiving, planning, performing, and responding. And there are social actors who are involved in different actions. Publics, scientific expert groups, government officials, businessmen and women, and scientific expert groups and government officials. And for performing, government officials are important social actors. And responding, there are 4 different social actors: victims and audiences and managers and messengers. And these are all social actions made by different social actors. It should be all to minimize the loss of human life, the possible loss of human life. So in terms of evaluating risk management measures, you can consider these the actions and these social actors, and you can decide whether these measures are effective or not, and these social actors are effective or not. Okay, now I talk about risk management megacities. Okay, megacities is a new phenomenon. It's the 21st century phenomenon, because in 1952 there's only New York and Tokyo are the only megacities. So when you define a city as megacities, you consider the number of inhabitants in a city. So 10 million and over. 10 million and over. So 70 years back, about 70 years back, only 2 cities in the world, they are mega cities. And Tokyo and New York, they are mega cities. But then by 1990, about 40 years, the number triples, 6 times, so 12. And 2005, 20 cities in the world, they are defined as megacities, which means if you consider the number of people living in 20 cities, it's a large number. 200 million living only 20 cities. And the year 2010, the number of megacities increased up to 26 cities. So whether you define cities as mega cities or not, you consider number of inhabitants, and over 10 million, that is the condition to define a city to mega city or not. Sometimes just one city is more than the total population of a country, right? Think about many countries in Europe. They have less than 10 million. Many countries in Europe, like Sweden or Norway. Many countries in the world, they have less than 10 million. But these 26 cities, just one city has more than 10 million. And it's a very significant social phenomenon we have to understand. And particularly in relation to management of natural disasters, it's a very important social phenomenon, right? Mm-hmm. So if you consider 26 cities with 10 million inhabitants, it becomes 2060 million. So how many are they? 2060 million. So 2억 6천만, right? 100만, 1000만, 억, 2억 6천만. 2억 6천만. So if you consider the total world population is 6,000 million, 60억. It's about 1 out of about 4% of the total world population lives in the 26 cities. So these are the list of mega cities. Number 1 is Kyoto, including Yokohama, Kawasaki, and Saitama. They are the region in the world inhabit most number of people. 34 million. Tokyo, including Yokohama, Kawasaki, and Saitama, 34 million. It's more than the population of Australia, and right? Australia is about 20 million.
Australia is about 23 million, so just Seoul has more than the entirety of Australia.
Okay. And Australia is a very big country, right? Big country. And number 2, second most populous cities in the world is the Canton area in China, including Northern Pearl River Delta, Dongguan and Foshan and Jingmen and Zhongshan. Okay, and then equally number 2 is Seoul, including Bucheon, Goyang, Incheon, Seongnam, and Suwon. Anybody lived in these places? You all come from these areas? Seoul, Suwon? Ah, okay, and Goyang? It's a satellite cities to Seoul, because when the city is too populated, as the city government's plan, and also people sometimes feeling tired living in Seoul, so they just move out, satellite cities to Seoul. So 24 million, and Killa said that it's the bigger number than the total population of Australia. And Australia is very big, huge, It takes like 6 hours by flight flying from Brisbane to Perth, right?
And we have different time zones too.
6 hours. One time I was living in Brisbane, my Australian friend all the time talking about missing his brother living in Perth, because it's like taking an international flight, and you have to make a good plan, so on and so on. Anyway, and Mexico City is including Nezahualcóyotl. Anybody speaking Spanish? Spanish? No? Ah!
But the first city's not Spanish, it's Incan. It's like pronounced differently.
Can you?
I would have no clue because it's not, it's like Mexico has an Incan culture, and that name is based off the Incan culture. And it's like like I'm not, like, it's hard to explain.
So it's not Spanish?
No.
Okay, sorry. Maybe it's Aboriginal, the people.
The native language.
Native language. Okay, native language. Okay. And number 5 is Delhi, including Faridabad and Ghaziabad. What does that mean, bad in Hindu? Maybe city? I don't know. And number 6 is Bombay, including Biondi, Kalyan, Tan, Uhasanagar. Okay, and number 7 is New York, including Newark and Paterson. 22 million, about 22, okay. Tokyo, 34 million, including Yokohama, Kawasaki, and Saitama. And Sao Paulo, including Guarulhos, about 20 million. And Manila, including Caloocan, Quezon City, about 19 million 600,000. And Shanghai, 18,400,000. So these are the top 10 cities in the world, 10 mega cities in the world. And in terms of risk management for possible disasters, natural events, these cities present very important issues. For example, they inhabited a lot of people, right? Basically, they inhabit a lot of people. So if things happen in these cities, that means it can claim a lot more people's lives with just one negative natural environment, natural event, natural disaster. So high risk of vulnerability, because normally these cities we looked at, they are created along the coastal lines and mountain areas, which means these cities can have unperceived risk, right? Right? Today we have 3 different types of risk. One is unperceived, unacknowledged, and unforeseeable. But these cities, whether it's Seoul or Shanghai, Sao Paulo, New York, these cities are all along the coastlines and around the mountainous areas. Why is that? Normally, the civilization began with the people living to the rivers and sea, right? Civilization. So that means these cities have quite possible unperceived risks. Okay, in terms of megacities, in relation to prepare possible mitigation measures, these cities are having quite high unperceived risks because their locations is mainly along the coastal lines and mountain areas. Hey, Oksana, you are kind of distracting me, because you two are keeping talking, no? Mm-hmm. So, and it indicates huge loss of population because the regions include huge population of the world. But then there are challenges. I said unperceived risks, but then it has also some unforeseeable risks because it's a new phenomenon. Basically, the urban phenomenon of megacities is a new phenomenon. So we don't have much knowledge. And we are not much equipped with technological thing to foresee. So if you are interested in risk management, you probably have an interest in megacities, particularly megacities, because the cities are mainly formed along the coastal lines and mountain areas, and also it includes a lot of the human population. But then it's a new phenomenon, so we do not have much knowledge. It's just a phenomena we have observed for the past 50 or 60 years. So we don't know much. And which means we don't have that much data and information. So it's difficult to design a model and difficult to design prepare mitigation and preparation measures. That's the big issue for risk management for megacities. We do not have much previous experience. We do not much have data and information because it's a new phenomenon. And also, we are not much equipped with technological devices to foresee the possible risks. And also, the megacities are formed of the very complexity of systems in terms of water, electricity, and healthcare security. All the kind of provision systems are very vast in size. And there are also formal and informal economics and social and ecological transformation and the urban scale. They are all very complex. So if things are complex, it's more difficult to design a model which can be used to apply to a real disaster. Because if you want to plan certain model, plan certain measure, if you can observe the patterns in previous, you are better conditioned to prepare a model for reaction. But if you do not have experience, if you do not have much information, if you do not have much technological infrastructure, it's very difficult to prepare, to model, to design a model for preparation in advance. Right? So observing the patterns are important, right? Like for example, what have happened in what way? If you know them well, you are better prepared to design a model for responding for a real disaster. But if you do not know the patterns, for you it's a big challenge. You just don't know how to act upon uncertainty. So it creates uncertainty. And normally the cities, megacities, particularly the governors of megacities, they prioritize economic development over environmental sustainability. Why is that? The governors of megacities, they are most likely to prioritize, they are more likely to consider important economic development over environmental sustainability. Why is that? What do you think so? Can you write down why do you think the reason the governors, the people who are in power in governing megacities, they are more likely to make important the idea of economic development than environmental sustainability. Okay, there are two options, whether to consider more important economic development and more important environmental sustainable development. But if you are governors, the idea is more priority going to economic development. Why is that? Why do you think it is? Okay, can you write down in the textbook? Okay, may I collect some responses for the question I gave you? 진영? Mm-hmm.
I think it's really shared sense of responsibility among users. What I think is that one nation's efforts, even if one nation makes efforts to decrease the pollution, that's not enough. An example can be the problem in Korea. So if South Korea makes efforts to improve air quality in Korea, it would be impossible for our government, only our government, to do so because Chinese cooperation is urgently needed to solve the problem. So because of the kind of lack of responsibility among nations, it's kind of difficult for just one nation to spend some money in environmental problems, I believe.
Hobin,
Yes.
do you understand what Junyoung is talking about?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me again?
Because megacities are related to other countries' megacities. Like Seoul, there are many foreign companies, foreign people in Seoul. So
Okay. Mega cities in each different country is normally it's an economic hub. So that means they are very important for the nation's economy, right? Whether it's Shanghai is the economic capital in China, and Seoul is the capital for everything in Korea, particularly the economically it's very important. So normally the mega cities in New York, Tokyo, mega cities in the world, they are the key player of the economy for each different country. And that means the mega cities being the key player for each country's economy, their economic activities in mega cities are very important to provide jobs and to provide several things in terms of economic things. And another thing is if you invest your money in economic development and if you invest your money in environmental sustainability, in terms of the taking times, the effect to visualize, for economic development, it's much faster to see the real effects compared to the money spent for environmental sustainability. Okay, you spend your 10 million, 100 million for saving unemployed people or for creating a lot more jobs, but then you spend 100 million for cleaning the water quality of Han River. In terms of taking time to see real effect, the same amount of money to be spent for economic development and for environmental sustainability, the real effect to visualize, to see, is much more instant, much more faster for seeing the real effect for economic development and natural environment. And think about the year in office for governors. They do not stay there for many years. They spend like 4 years, 5 years in their position. And they want to spend more money in economic development, which can be, their effect can be visualized effective faster than money that goes to cleaning air quality and water quality. So megacities has very different important issues, and in terms of risk management, megacities now emerging as an important research topic for risk management for natural disasters. And I said several times why it is so. So even if it is a very important place for planning risk management, but then because the cities, megacities are the key players for a country's economy, it's difficult to prioritize environmental sustainability over economic development. And also Hobin mentioned that in megacities, they host a lot of different nations, companies, global companies, right? So you have to, so Seoul, in many different megacities, they host very different global companies, and they have to, the cities, they have to please those the global companies. They are hosted to certain megacities. And these all bring challenges for people living in megacities in terms of real natural disaster happens. Okay? So I ask you to look at the article we looked at, the perceptions of public perceptions of China in China, public perceptions of environmental risk in China. If you go to the page 203, as I mentioned that there are different groups involved in risk management, whether it's publics, scientific expert groups, business people, and government officials. The question is about how important the public participation in environmental risk management. And according to university students, the participation of public, Chinese public in environmental risk management. Can you summarize? Can you write down in the textbook, looking at the figure 4A, and what you can conclude based upon this figure 4A? Okay, topic for today is environmental risks and human disasters. And there's a very good article that presents research outcome of a survey questionnaire among university students in China, in Beijing. And I mentioned several different social groups that are considered to prepare risk management schemes, risk management measures. And the question asks about how important public participation for environmental risk management. And according to figure 4A, in what way you can conclude? Okay, 선영?
So looking at this graph, about 2/3 of Chinese Beijing's university students that public participation is really important in environmental risk management.
Yeah, so more than 0.5%. So about 2/3 of the university students who are asked about this question, they consider public participation is important, right? In preparing environmental risk management measures for China. Right? They consider, among 2/3 of the university students, they consider public participation is important. But then there's another story. If you go to the 204, the question also asks about the science and technology. Whether science and technology information is important in preparing environmental risk management. Okay, once again, can you write down your conclusion based upon the findings, the outcomes, the figure 4B? Okay, may I hear some responses to the question I give you for figure 4B? 원식?
Chinese students here also think that science and technology is important in environmental risk management, with great and very great about 81% maybe.
So compared to the finding that is presented in figure 4A, what can you say?
These students think that science and technology is more important than public participant.
Yeah, a lot more students. So it's about 80%, more than 80%. They consider scientific information is important in preparing environmental risk management, compared to the response about 60, about more than 60%. So more students consider the information of scientific information and technological information is important in preparing environmental risk management. Okay, now I ask you to look at figure 6. In 205, figure 6, it shows the perceptions shared by university students, which environmental disasters should be prioritized in preparing environmental management, and in what way they consider the management, the measures are effective or not for each different types of environmental risks. Okay, once again, can you write down your conclusion based upon the outcome suggested in figure 6? Okay, Jiwan? You, Jiwan, Can you tell me your conclusion?
It shows that there is like this huge gap between the priorities that people think and how it's managed.
Sure. That it seems that there's somehow gaps, right? The longer bar and shorter bar, and it shows that among university students, they consider water pollution, air pollution. These are the two natural disasters they consider to be to be managed properly. So these two are the natural disasters. The university students considered they should be given for environmental management, but then they say in terms of the effectiveness in management for water pollution and air pollution are not good in terms of the perceptions of the university students who are asked of this question. And for nuclear power pollution among university students, for the prioritized environmental risk management, nuclear power pollution is number least prioritized. So I can say that at least in China, among university students, they have a high fear for water pollution and air pollution, right? These two natural disasters, these two environmental risks. Okay, this is show me that that's correct, that's true. Yeah, water pollution, air pollution. These are the two major environmental risks university students in China they perceive. What about in Korea? If you ask the same question, for example, the one in figure 1, if you are given to list how serious, how least serious, which one do you consider as number 1? But some item I don't understand why they put it. For example, social unrest, and I don't know why they put this category in this natural disaster thing. For me, it's conceptually somehow not clear. And work safety, for me, it's conceptually not clear. Okay, this research outcome tells us that among university students in China, water pollution, they are most worried about water pollution and air pollution, and then accordingly, they consider the government management schemes, measures are not effective for against water pollution and air pollution. Okay. So I'll conclude for the topic for today. It's environmental risks and human disaster. So modern society is double layered in terms of the relationship with the technology, positive and negative effects upon human society. So we should be able to look at the both aspects of technological development, particularly when they come to technological progress, technological development, when they come to the human population, come to human society, sometimes they create unexpected outcomes which are negative. So we should be able to look at the both sides, and we should be able to imagine the both positive and negative. We should be able to think about the both positive and negative. And environmental risk is one dimension of the negative effect of technological advances. And environmental risk in modern society is called technological disaster, and it's called new risk. So therefore, managing environmental risk is among the key issues that have to be dealt with in contemporary society. And how to manage environmental risks and to reduce human disasters are the key questions and to answer. And of particular, megacities that inhabit significant size of human populations present dear importance, very important for risk management for disastrous environmental events. Okay, that's the conclusion for today. Okay, that's all.